All right. So a long-awaited whistleblower testimony was held in Congress on Wednesday. And what the witnesses had to say was terrifying. Even Vox here. Boeing's problems were as bad as you thought.
I'll be right back. Go ahead.
Boeing went under the magnifying glass at not one, but two Senate hearings today, examining allegations of deep-seated safety issues plaguing the once revered plane manufacturer. Witnesses, including two whistleblowers, painted a disturbing picture of a company that cut corners, ignored problems, and threatened employees who spoke up. These hearings have convened just 4 months after a door plug blew out of a Boeing-made Alaska Airlines plane mid-flight in January, sparking further concerns about a precipitous downside in Boeing's reputation for safety and quality in recent years. The first hearing, held by the Senate Commerce Committee, questioned aviation experts who put together an FAA report published in February. It concluded that the company had not made enough strides in improving its safety culture since the deadly 2018 and 2019 737 MAX crashes that killed 346 people. Quote, there exists a disconnect, for lack of a better word, between the words that are being said by Boeing management and what is being seen and experienced by employees across the company, said witness Javier De Luis, an aerospace engineer and lecturer at MIT. That is the nicest way to say the company is lying I've ever heard. That is quite a tortured way, roundabout way of saying they're fucking lying. The second hearing put the spotlight on two whistleblowers, Boeing quality engineer Sam Salpour and former Boeing engineer Ed Pearson, alongside aviation safety advocate and former FAA engineer Joe Jacobson and Ohio State University aviation professor Sean Pruchnicki. The whistleblower slammed Boeing for allegedly knowing about defective parts and other serious assembly problems and choosing to ignore or even conceal them. Such problems could slow down production and be expensive to fix, and internal and external critics say that Boeing's priority was maximizing its profits. Salpour, who has worked at Boeing since 2007, came forward in early April warning that more than 1,000 Boeing planes in the sky were in danger of structural failure due to premature fatigue. In the 787 line, tiny gaps between plane parts hadn't been properly filled, he said. Quote, I found gaps exceeding the specification that were not properly addressed 98.7% of the time, Salpour testified during the hearing today. He said the debris ended up in these unfilled gaps 80% of the time. Such debris could, in some cases, result in a fire. Boeing, for its part, has denied Salpour's assertions, saying that claims about the structural integrity of the 787 are inaccurate, and noting further that it had tested the 787 line many more times than the jet would actually take off or land in its lifespan, and had found no evidence of fatigue. Now, this is interesting. I looked through 4 articles on this and chose this one because it had information I didn't see anywhere else. Salpour pointed out today that the above and beyond stress testing referred to older 787 planes in which excessive force wasn't used during assembly. This sounds like pretty typical Boeing, right? The misdirection. Talking about the faulty software system that contributed to the deadly 737 MAX crashes, Pruchnicki, the OSU professor, accused Boeing of sneaking the system through the certification process. It was all about money, he said. That's why those people died. Just to fill this in a little bit, one of the reasons, the main reason the 737 MAX crashed was in order to compete with Airbus, they designed a plane that essentially wasn't airworthy, where the engines were placed in such a way that they needed a computer system to adjust the pitch of the plane in case the nose went too high up or too far down. They snuck this system past the FAA without really explaining what it was, and it didn't fucking work. And the CEO knew this, and other people knew that this system was dangerous. That's why I always say Dennis Muhlenberg, who was the CEO at that time, he was the mayor in Jaws. He told people it was safe to get in the water, even though he knew there was danger to the public. He should be in prison. Instead, he got a golden parachute. Boeing has said it's cooperating fully with investigators, but at another Senate hearing in March, the chair of the National Transportation Safety Board testified that 2 months after the Alaska Airlines incident, Boeing still had not provided several records related to door plug failure. Boeing says it can't find them. Now, this is very interesting. This is also not in every article. Pearson, the ex-Boeing whistleblower, testified today that this couldn't be true. Quote, "I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is a criminal cover-up," he said. "Records do, in fact, exist. I know this because I've personally passed them to the FBI." Dun, 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 dun. So maybe some people will finally go to jail. By the way, on that, Boeing basically got a suspended sentence. They settled the MAX crashes for billions of dollars, but they're on probation, apparently. Now, some people at the Justice Department are saying they have violated their probation by not going forward and correcting the problems. So they should, once again, be liable to prosecution for the MAX crashes. We can only hope. A steady crop of whistleblowers have come forward over the decades flagging issues with Boeing's planes, particularly after the MAX crashes. Boeing's safety concern tip portal also saw a 500% increase in reports after the Alaska Airlines incident. A previous whistleblower from Boeing's South Carolina plant, former Boeing quality manager John Barnett, claimed there were numerous quality issues with Boeing's manufacturing process, including dangerous debris that hadn't been removed from its jets and issues with its emergency oxygen system. He was recently found dead of an apparent suicide. Right before his third day of deposition testimony in his whistleblower lawsuit, Barnett, like others, said he had faced retaliation from the company. Some of Barnett's former co-workers don't believe he died by suicide, according to reporting from the American Prospect. Imagine that. All right, so we have a video of Sailpour's testimony in which, among other things, he describes workers at Boeing forcing the plane parts into place by jumping on them.
Have analyzed Boeing's own data to conclude that the company is taking manufacturing shortcuts on the 787 program that may significantly reduce the airplane safety and the life cycle. Since 2013, there have been serious issues on the 787 program, not properly closing thousands of gaps in its assembly of the fuselage on major joints. Boeing's standard says that these gaps must be closed, usually by a small shim or filler called a shim when they exceed 5 thousandths of an inch. This seems very small. Boeing's PR team like to call it the width of a human hair when you are operating at 35,000 feet. Details are that the size of a human hair can be a matter of a life and death. In a rush to address its bottlenecks in production, Boeing hit problems, pushing pieces together with excessive force to make them appear that the gaps don't exist, even though they exist. The gap didn't actually go away, and this may result in premature fatigue failure. Effectively, they are putting out defective airplanes. I repeatedly produced reports for my supervisors and Boeing management demonstrating that the gaps in the 787 not being properly measured or shimmed in two major joints of the 787. Evaluating from the 29 inspected airplane data, I found gaps exceeding the specification that were not properly addressed 98.7% of the time. I want to repeat that. 98.7% of the time, the gaps that they were supposed to be shimmed, they were not shimmed. The other issue that I found, when you have these gaps and you drill through them, you get some debris in the stack-ups. This is known to be a problem, not a good thing for the airplanes by Boeing. But Boeing data also, from the inspection of the data, shows that the debris ended up in the gaps 80% of the time. Again, you have debris in the gaps 80% of the time. I want to make clear that I have raised these issues over 3 years. I was ignored. I was told not to create delays. I was told, frankly, to shut up. At one point, Boeing management got sick of me and raising these issues and moved me out of the 787 program into the 777 program. On the 777 program, I found problems. Again, I found that Boeing started a new process to build the airplane without taking into the consideration of the design of the airplane and how the airplane was designed. As a result, I witnessed severe misalignment when the planes were assembled. Boeing manufacturing used unmeasured and unlimited amount of force to correct the misalignment. And this also weakens the airplane in the long run. I literally saw people jumping on the pieces of the airplane to get them to align. I call it the Tarzan effect, among other improper methods. Again, I raised concerns internally. I was sidelined. I was told to shut up. I received physical threats. My boss said, I would have killed someone who said what you said in a meeting. And then this is not a safety culture when you get threatened by bringing issues of safety concerns.
That's not good.
Yeah, and at a company where people turn up mysteriously dead in the parking lot, when your boss says something like that, it's not a figure of fucking speech.
Yeah, it hits a little different. Yeah.
No, this guy I think it was in his testimony, he said if something happens to him, he's at peace. I mean, of course he's got to be thinking about that. This
well,
guy,
how could you not?
They obviously, allegedly, one can speculate. I'm sure he died in a very safe and effective suicide. But, one might believe for good reason that this fucking guy was openly whacked by the company in a very transparent and obvious murder. So what's that like for a whistleblower?
Of course. Yeah. Now that when he was talking about having heard that, the timeline is he probably heard that before the John Barnett incident happened. But still, I mean, looking back on it now,
but in this
giving
testimony,
your testimony now, right? Exactly.
It was either in this testimony or in an interview. He said, I'm at peace if something happens to me. Of course, you're thinking that way.
Well, yeah, you can't not think that.
It's not like they were subtle about it. I'm sorry, man.
Right?
It's allegedly, it's speculation, but I'm sorry, it doesn't look good. Believe me, not good. That guy in the parking lot.
Yeah. No, that's just, the saga continues, but at least now someone was able to actually testify in a way that is complete. Obviously, Barnett's was not finished. He went for one day and then was going back for the second day.
Right. Well, there's him. There's Ed Pearson, who, I'd really like to interview him. He is one of the early whistleblowers who was really laying this all out for people. He's one of the main people who put me onto this story years ago. This is exactly what he said was going to happen. He said, you're going to see these planes starting to have problems because of the way they're being put together. And now here we are.
Please clap.